All right, so for the next topic, I want to talk about artist tours. We've been seeing a lot of artists canceling their tours recently, and it's been alarming to say the least. But at the same time, this is a topic that I actually talk about a lot to people just because I attend a lot of live shows. I've been on a few tours with a couple of artists, and go to the club and see cats performing at the club or whatever. And so I know most recently Bobby Shmurda was just in the news because he had to cancel his tour. And I believe Ashanti as well. She had really low ticket sales, so she had to cancel some of her tour dates too. In the case of like a Bobby Shmurda, I would say that for him, I mean, honestly, he's only had one hot song, the Hot Ninja song. And so he had that song, had hella momentum, had a viral moment with the song, and then he ended up getting locked up. So he lost a lot of momentum, from when he got locked up. Did a few years, came back home. There was definitely a lot of, motion around him when he came back home. People excited that he came back home, but he's failed to have another record. And so it's one thing to, have people talking about you and your name being in the blogs and stuff like that. But if you don't have a hot record in the moment, then you're not gonna sell. Also, like speaking of selling tickets, that's another like whole aspect of this where doing shows at the club versus selling tickets, hard, tickets to fans to come to your show is two totally different vibes. If somebody is coming to your city and you see that, okay, this club that we go to every Thursday or whatever, like this certain artist is gonna be there, doing a walkthrough, performing or whatever, then since that club is already getting people in the door on a weekly basis, artists can get back doing those type of shows pretty regularly. And honestly, until an artist builds himself up to be able to have a sustainable audience that buys tickets from them, they can get some really good money like getting them bags out the clubs for real. I mean, a lot of artists, cats will be getting like 20 racks, 30 racks, 40 racks, doing club shows. And that's just basically them being in the club, standing in the section. Club owner usually comp them a couple of bottles or whatever, and then they give them a microphone and they rap in the club. Now, most of these artists, when they do this, they just rapping over they song, meaning the lyrics in the song is playing and everything, and they just rapping just over their own song. There's a total difference between doing that type of show and actually performing at a venue like a House of Blues or like a Coca-Cola Roxy or like a Center Stage or in Milwaukee like the Rave, the Eagles Ballroom, you know what I mean? Like venues like that where you have to sell, hard tickets. Now, one reason why outside of, you just needing a hot song, one reason why I feel like a lot of artists, even more recently, haven't been able to sell tour tickets is because a lot of artists haven't put their focus on their show performance. So they're not actually rehearsing, they're not practicing. They're rapping over the track and they don't have a TV track or a show track, meaning that basically your instrumental playing, maybe the hook is playing, some of your ad libs are playing on the song, and then you rapping in between, and your voice is the main focus of the video. Or I'm sorry, your voice is the main focus of your show, of your performance. A lot of artists are getting hot, like on TikTok or you know what I mean, different ways that they going viral. Some of them don't even have time to practice their show. And some of them don't even have, big homies around them, don't have mentors around them, don't have experienced people in the music industry around them to be able to even show them the proper way to prepare for a show. So that's a huge issue right there because you have a lot of these new artists. Like I see, like when I'm watching Rolling Loud or when I'm, watching like some, or even when I go out and I'm seeing a lot of these artists perform, I mean, a lot of these artists are performing straight with their lyrics playing. And it's like, if I'm gonna come to a spot and see you perform, and I gotta just hear the lyrics like playing, like it's basically like you just rapping over your Spotify or something like that, then I'm not gonna really wanna, come and see you perform, because the beauty of a live performance is when an artist like even sometimes changes their cadence a little bit,
Mhm.
like in the song. Like I know what it sounds like when I'm listening to it at the crib or when I'm listening to it in the car. But if you got a way that you can kind of freak your voice, or you know what I'm saying, like a way that you say, or sometimes even say some of the words differently to match like the city that you in, or whatever, or to match like the environment that you in, like that makes a live show and makes people want to see you perform. But if you just rapping just over the song, like we playing Apple Music or something, and you basically rapping a couple of your lyrics, then that's not entertaining. So that's not gonna make people want to actually buy tickets. And another thing that's interesting to me is that we see a lot of these newer artists seem to be. I mean, I know Ashanti's a different case because she's not a newer artist, and her show hasn't been selling. But I'm gonna get to her in a second. But a lot of these new artists tours aren't selling and are canceling. But then we're seeing like the legacy artists where their tours are being sold out. 50 Cent tours been sold out. Busta, he been doing tours like they've been selling well. A lot of our legacy artists, they have been able to sell tickets, and I believe that's because of the era that they come from, where performing, artist development was still prevalent. Like now we're in an age where artist development isn't even prevalent. So an artist goes viral, a song becomes a hit, potentially overnight. An artist ain't never even performed before, and now they're performing on these big stages. Jello Ball is a perfect example of that, where his song, blew up. I'm not gonna say overnight, but his song blew up pretty fast, went viral, went crazy, and then he performed at that playoff game. I think it was the Detroit Lions playoff game. It just wasn't a good look for him because he didn't know how to perform properly, and I'm guessing, I'm anticipating that he didn't have many rehearsals before actually doing that. Touring at a concert is totally different than performing at a show. Number one, being in a venue, whether it's a smaller venue like a House of Blues or something like that, or being in a big venue like Jello Ball performing at that stadium, you have to wear in ears. So they basically wearing a headset so that they can, or AirPods or whatever you want to call it. They wearing like headphones in their ears so that they can hear themselves, hear the track, and all of that. Because otherwise, like all of that sound would be drowned out by the audience. So that in itself, just having to hear yourself in your ears, that's like a whole different experience. It could, kind of be like it could kind of feel like an echo to you if you're not used to doing it, if you're not used to rehearsing and practicing that. It could make your voice delayed, or, make you feel delayed. And so, that practice makes perfect is, something that's so important in this. And that's why artist development is so important these days for these artists, even these new artists. And that's why a lot of these artists, need to have people in their camps that have experience. That's why artist development is just so important, because of things like that. And artists are missing opportunities because they actually can't perform well, and so then they won't get booked, or these tours will get canceled. Now, in Ashanti's case, I feel like her situation is where, Ashanti's name is spoken about like in the media. God rest his soul, Irv Gotti talking about her a lot on different platforms. So her name was, popping up. And then also, I know that she actually redid the vocals on a lot of her old albums so that she could then re-release them herself and make her money off of them, because she wasn't making money from her songs that were put out on Murder Inc. So her name's in the media for things like that. Her getting married to Nelly, stuff like that. But Ashanti hasn't recently, had a hit or hasn't had one of her old songs kind of come back around and blow up on TikTok, kind of giving her like a resurgence, giving her a new life and what she's doing in music. So I feel like her tour tickets weren't selling because of that, because the hype around her name was more around drama and things like that and not around the music. And I feel like, how they say all press is good press. Well, I think that's the case in certain areas, but I don't think that's the case when it comes to trying to sell tickets. So for her, her not having a current hot song or a resurgence is what has caused her to not have ticket sales. So just going back to it, artists really need to, even in the early stages, and again, we talking about manifestation stages of this, as a part of being a rapper, you need to practice your stage performance. A MC is the master of ceremony, meaning that you can move a crowd, all pun intended, and meaning that you have control over an audience, and your voice, can control the setting that you're in. That's super important. And then legacy artists that are struggling to sell tickets, they need to do some marketing, do some work to either get some of their older songs back popping in this new viral space. And I feel like they just need, new music that's hot. And that's just, it ain't really nothing else around it. Like, you just need to get back hot, to be able to sell those tickets. So, and then another thing, the new artists that are getting club shows, at a certain point, you have to be willing to switch from doing club shows, which is gonna for sure be getting you more of a bag. You got to transition from that into doing, into doing tours and getting used to being in front of fans that buy hard tickets. That's super important. I know when I worked with YFN Lucci around Wish Me Well too, I think at that time he was getting probably like 40 grand a show, maybe more. He had an opportunity to go on tour. This was when I believe it was 21 Savage, Kodak Black was supposed to go on that tour. They had like the animated tour artwork. There were a couple of other artists that was on that tour. But I remember, he made a really hard choice or had a really difficult decision to make, where he was getting, some big checks from these club shows, but then he had to maybe take like 2,500 or 3,500 a show so that he could start getting accustomed to being in front of an audience that buys hard tickets. But then that allowed him to be able to, gain fans in that space to be able to, go on tour and do things like that. So, it's a lot around getting yourself to a point to where you can actually sell tour tickets. But it's so important because what do they say? I'm not going to even try to say it. I forget. It's piss poor management, or I forget the way that they say it. But man, practice make perfect. You got to rehearse. Artist development is important. And you have to understand that there's a difference between the club audience and fans that are actually willing to buy hard tickets. And you have to get yourself to that point so that you can sell hard tickets and go on tour. And that's real spit.